So, Sabrina, I have been looking so forward to this. And I just started to talk about right before we jumped on here. I have been so inspired by the change in the tone of your messages over the past maybe year and a half that we've been connected. I don't know exactly how long it's been. I know we're all part of the changing work community, but I don't know if it's me and if I'm paying attention in a different way. Or maybe it's me that's changed, but your tone seems to change. And I think I've reached out to you a few times, and I know I've commented on your post. Just this really powerful self leadership and self ownership of your journey, which has been, I mean, talk about all the change that's going on in the world. Just change with you personally has been profound. So I just wanted to make that observation before we get started. It's been inspiring to see and hear and watch you sort of transform into this exactly where I think we all need to go, very empowered, self led, authentic version of ourselves, which is the truest version of ourselves.
Thank you, Terry. That means so much more than you realize. I was actually still noticing it this week. It's something I'm actively working on. As much as you're seeing the tone change, as much as you see the vulnerability, or you probably even feel the confidence at times. I'm still very hard on myself, and I'm still learning to I guess, see myself as I actually am, and how I'm showing up, especially on social media, not how I guess I see myself in my head. And so, yeah, just thank you for reflecting that back to me.
Mm,
It means a lot.
Well, even that, even saying that it is still a journey for you. It's still a work in progress is the truth. Like owning that. Like you're not done, right? None of us are done, but you're still on this journey and sort of admitting that you're still hard on yourself because we all are. Even if we've been working on self-awareness and working on our own personal journey for even years. I mean, I know I still catch myself. Same thing that you just said. I still catch myself. I think the power is in the fact that we catch ourselves. That's the progress, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you're so right. And I've been trying to also learn to share it more, because I think one of the things that's so hard for people when they're trying to grow is they see all of these people just pretending like it's all unicorns and rainbows, and it's not. But that also doesn't mean there's anything wrong with that either. Like, I don't even remotely regret the fact that there's nothing. We're actually a month shy of 2 years right now of me finding my true self. There's nothing in my life that looks the same as it did 2 years ago. And I don't regret any of that. I don't regret any of the difficulty that it took to get here. That doesn't make it any less beautiful, but yeah, it's not all unicorns and rainbows.
Mm, mm,
Yeah, I hear that, and thanks for sharing that in the way that you have, in your authentic way. And I echo what Terry said. I've known you kind of through the community and been watching your journey for some time. And I suppose from a perspective of you know we talk about radical resilience and how we embody it. What purpose does it serve when we're hard on ourselves, right? Because this is something that I've been talking, I did a LinkedIn post a couple of days ago talking about choose your hard. And there's an element of, yeah, we are hard on ourselves. And what purpose does it serve for you? And the second question, and you can merge the two if you like, you don't have to answer them as two separate questions, is, for many people, navigating the unknown is a massive challenge. And so the question really is you reference that the last 2 years, you know nothing today exists how it looks in the last 2 years. And I know that's been relationship breakdown and jobs and everything else. How have you managed to do that, and I suppose hold the beauty in the way that you're describing of the truth and the reality of it? Because as you say, it's not always easy.
Yeah. When I think of the hard, it's kind of a reminding myself of the way that I used to view that versus the way that I view it now. Perfect example. I never really have been the one to initiate a breakup in an intimate relationship. I say that because there was one where I sort of did, but that's a whole other story. But for the most part, I was always the one hanging on too long because I thought, like, I'll just make it work. Like, it's too hard to let this go, even though I know something's wrong. And, fast forward to this whole different era of my life where I started choosing that other hard a few years ago when I moved to Colorado. I mean, I moved from Louisiana, I moved over 1,000 miles away, never having lived any more than like 10 miles from home. And I did it because I was like, well, I'm completely miserable. I hate my life. I was actually extremely numb, and half the time I was barely feeling anything. So the way that I view the hard is, I think it's me being honest with myself that there is no hard that will ever be worse than what I had. There is nothing I could possibly face that is worse than me basically not feeling anything at all, and me not being connected to myself and the people around me. And the honestly, what was almost even worse about that is I actually had a high level of self-awareness at that time, but I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know how to act on it. So I also literally had the awareness that I was like not in my body, not enjoying my life, as I was not enjoying my life. And
Mm.
that was complete hell, to be completely honest with you. I honestly don't remember like the second part of the question, Earl, but yeah, I think that's when I think of hard, that's just what comes up for me.
You kind of merged the two questions because the second part was, how do we go into navigating the unknown? And again, this is a real part of resilience for me, and even radical resilience, because we're hardwired for safety, right? Our disposition is to go to what's safe, and the unknown tends to feel unsafe to us. So routines and everything else we know, but when we're exiting from a lot of different things at the same time, which is a transformational process in itself. Yeah, that's the piece where it's kind of like, well, how do you do that? And
Mm.
that's even where the question about choosing your heart comes in, because the more that we can do that intentionally and consciously, I think we prepare ourselves to be able to navigate those challenging times that are outside of our control as well.
Yeah. Thank you for kind of repeating that. I guess even though maybe I partially answered the question, just to speak to the how a little bit more, I think it's just been that honesty. It's that honesty of, well, there was this version of me and there was this version of my life that was so utterly miserable that I would never want to live that again. So I think it's almost just that simple to an extent. I mean, you were mentioning just kind of like the even just like the self-awareness or like the recognizing, Terry. And so I think it's just like the recognizing where you're actually at, and then just having that honesty that, like, I'm not happy, like this isn't working. So yeah, this is scary over here, but it's not scarier than what's not working.
Oh gosh, that's a beautiful point. Yeah, I think we get to a point to where we realize that is the hard that I'm in now worth the sacrifice of what will still be hard, right? But it'll be hard that's more aligned with becoming who you truly are. Or I shouldn't say becoming, because we are who we are, right? But letting that version of ourselves emerge. And that takes a tremendous amount of courage, because to Earl's point, we are hardwired. Our brains are quite literally hardwired to keep us safe and to keep us going down the same pathways and living the same lives and getting up and going through the same routines and the same jobs and dealing with the same toxic bosses and blaming other people for how we're experiencing our lives. Like our brains are hardwired to do that. So it doesn't only take self-awareness to break out of those patterns. It takes a tremendous amount of courage also, because like it doesn't feel safe. Even though, it's not the lion, our brain, sort of assumes, or that's how our brain reacts. Um, I wanted to react to something that you said earlier, and I just lost it, darn it, which is the challenge with this just being so freeform and so organic. But I I want to dive into a second. All three of us are authors for the Changing Work Collaborative book projects, which was such a fun experience. I'm anxious to hear what your experience was, sort of getting that truth out. Earl and I were part of the first book. You're part of the second book, right?
Mhm.
Leading with Self Compassion was part of the second book.
Yeah.
Loved your chapter. I loved the authenticity. And I thought it was so relevant that you brought up self compassion early in our conversation. I can't even remember if it was before we hit record, but it was such, you made the point so powerfully what an important part of your journey self compassion has been. And I see even today people sort of foo fooing self compassion. Oh, yeah, that's good. It doesn't mean I'm not compassionate. I am compassionate for other people, but I just have a really hard time being compassionate to myself, because so often, even today, when we've been talking about self compassion for however long it's been, even today, so many people really think it's an effective tool for pushing yourself to achieve more, pushing yourself for success, which is a point that you make in your chapter as well. But I love I wanted to get your reaction to something that you wrote here, which I thought was so beautifully stated. You say, every expectation I had clung to suddenly felt like it belonged to someone else. Like a suit I had worn my whole life was never tailored for me. I realized none of what I had learned thus far was made with someone like me in mind. And by the way, the like me pertains to all of us, because all these social norms apply to, I don't know who they apply to, but they're so general that they really don't apply to any one of us. So, what was that process like for you, becoming aware that these social expectations, these social quote unquote norms, were not yours? What did that process look like for you?
Interestingly enough, I actually learned a lot from TikTok during my journey in the last 2 years. People who aren't on there as much, or aren't on, like, I guess, a certain side of things, I think have no awareness that there's actually a lot of, like, how do I want to say this? Political, like, there's just a lot of like history and learning, and there's so much going on there. And so as I was, especially earlier in my transition, I was learning all of these things. I was learning what it means to be queer. I was learning what it means to be trans. I was learning the experiences of women, or Black people, or marginalized groups. I was learning all of these different things that I had no awareness of, because the way that I described my life before is I do refer to that other version of me as him. Of course, as you mentioned earlier, we're always who we actually are. So I was always her on the inside, but I wasn't someone who was kind of straddling both. I genuinely did not know. I had no hint of who I was until the night that I knew who I was.
Mm.
So, over the past 2 years, I'm like suddenly seeing all of these things, and I'm seeing all of these different life experiences. And it was just so insane to me, because I had this view of the world that was completely different than anyone else's. And I realized there's still nothing that's completely objective, but my view was insanely privileged. I was one of those people, for example, that was, just pick yourself up by your bootstraps, like, you got this, like, you can just figure it out. And there's a portion of that that can be helpful, but then there's also a portion of that that leaves no room for any of the reality of what everybody else is going through or what everybody else has gone through. So that was really how I started to kind of learn, is just hearing from other people, and just, I guess, being open to realizing that my experience wasn't what I thought that it was. And then what that also turned into is me seeing all of these little threads. Like, one of the ones that's still most interesting to me is, just statistically, men will typically like apply for jobs, go to job interviews very differently than women will, and they'll tend to be very confident, and they won't worry about whether or not they're qualified. They'll just kind of do the thing. And I never showed up that way. So even though, as far as I knew, I had all of this privilege that men had, somewhere along the way, I also picked up some of the things that women were doing and internalized that and lived that way. And work was one of them. It was a lot about, am I good enough? I need this self-validation. Like, I don't want to rock the boat. It was all kinds of different things like that. And so that's what started helping me unravel what was actually true for me or what wasn't true for me, and realizing what society was projecting onto me, because I had this, in one way, extremely privileged experience, but then also I had all of these other little things that are nothing like what a typical man might experience in the world.
Mm, mm, very interesting. Yeah. I'll give you
Yeah.
a chance to react to that, Earl, or I can jump in, whichever one.
Yeah, no, jump in. You seem like you was onto something else just then.
Well, I was just curious. The writing process can be very cathartic, and I think that's what draws some of us to the writing, is because it's a way for us to learn more about ourselves. I'm wondering, did any of these new insights come up for you as you were writing your chapter for the book?
That's exactly how the chapter went. So I actually applied for the opportunity to be a part of the second book, not necessarily thinking that I was going to get it, especially because I actually didn't. I wasn't financially able to contribute, so I also had to apply for the kind of the scholarship portion of things. But I didn't consider myself a writer. I also, as you may remember, still really wasn't all that confident, and I was putting myself out there to an extent, but like, the message was all over the place. Yeah, and so I really learned through that experience, and I also learned the compassion. I would not say that I had the same level of compassion for myself and for others until I wrote that chapter, and I realized why I wasn't more compassionate, and all of the kind of recent events that I talk about in the middle of the chapter that just really hit me so hard, that I just never understood as I was going through them.
Mm,
Yeah, no, that's. I think there's a couple of things that I really wanted to touch on, but I think the key thing and theme that's coming out for me right now is this whole thing about, it all starts with awareness. Is the first thing. And, we've talked about it before, Terry. I frame it as radical self honesty, and being harsh with myself, which is humble acceptance and radical self honesty. And, for me, it sounds like you've got your own element of that, which is being the honest with yourself. And I think unless you're honest with yourself, you can't really be honest with anybody else, right? And I think that's always a challenge. And it allows us to internalize it first. And that's where this whole notion of, for me, authenticity shows up, because to me, you can't be authentic unless you're being radically self-honest. So, it all kind of doves into that. But one of the things, actually, Sabrina, that I know is that you're interested, and not only just interested, I believe you work with human design. And so, how has that influenced you and learning about yourself and knowing about yourself, and how you've integrated? What role has human design played as well? Because I know that's definitely something you've shared about.
Yeah, it's actually played one of the biggest roles in, I guess, sort of the business side of the journey in the past 2 years. I mean, certainly the personal side as well, but it's just me kind of seeing all of the themes is how I look at it. I think human design can tend to be talked about in the same way that a lot of personality like quizzes and things are, although human design is so much more than that and so much more scientific than that. I think it's often almost treated as if we have to then conform to that or we have to then fit ourselves in a box. But I don't see it as, do I fit in this box? Am I like following exactly what this is telling me to do? I just see it as, what are the themes? And so, as an example, I also am very into the gene keys. If you ever heard about that, there's a lot of kind of overlap with human design, and there's different pieces of it that talk essentially about like shadow states and gift states. So essentially, just like a lower form of consciousness and a higher form of consciousness. And I really pay a lot of attention and dive very deeply into those because I love seeing the themes. So, for example, for me, it's themes of like loving the adventure, it's acceptance, it's just kind of getting lost in like the creativity or not even really like feeling time as it's passing. And all of these are very archetypal, so when you talk about them, they do wind up resonating with people. But what I always like to say is there are ones that are a little bit more specific to you, and so I think that's the biggest way that it's helped me is I notice the themes a lot more now. Like when I said I was being hard on myself this week, and I was really starting to notice some things and continue to make some of these big changes, it's because these themes are at the very forefront of my mind. I don't any longer feel like I'm flying blind, so to speak. It feels like I have some sort of navigational tool.
Mm, mm,
Yeah,
yeah,
love
I
that.
love that. And I love what Earl said about authenticity and how important it is, not only as you can't have radical self awareness, Earl, to your point, without being authentic. And radical authenticity is so important and powerful. I feel like, especially in this time. And those of us that have the courage to be radically authentic on purpose and in public, I really believe are an important part of helping others navigate this change, this really dramatic change that we've gone through, that we're continuing to go through, that we will continue to go through for some years coming up. So I think putting ourselves out there in this very bold and vulnerable way has tremendous power and tremendous influence. And I just remembered you made a comment, and I think it was a comment on a post. I don't think it was a DM that we had, but you mentioned that you want to impact a billion people. And I'm paraphrasing here because I just remembered it. And it was just, it's so timely in this conversation. It just really landed with me. And you really think, you really feel called to do that. And you really think you will impact a billion people. And I think this radical authenticity that you have, how open you are, how vulnerable you are, is a big part of that impact traveling far and wide. But I love that. So where did that come from? That billion people? I mean, is that something that where just tell me a little bit about where that comes from because I love it.
Yeah, I honestly try not to identify with the number so much anymore because I think there was a part of that that was not quite the, I guess, level of kind of authenticity that I would want to show up to that mission
Yeah.
with. But
Well, and the reality is the number's not knowable. So the
sure,
billion doesn't really matter, but the message that I got is you want to have a broad positive influence and impact in the world.
yeah, it actually started when I was 15. So you have to think about this in the context of the fact that I lived in the southern United States. And for anyone that kind of understands that culture in general, and I feel like it is absolutely okay to generalize here, because truthfully almost the entire part of that country is very, very similar. They tend to not live very big lives. There's a lot of people down there that tend to very easily settle. They tend to very easily stick with the people they've always known, the places they've always gone, the things that they've always done. And most of my family and most of the friends I used to have when I lived there is no different. So when I was 15, I actually had this night where, so my parents and I were in a bowling league, mostly because of me. That was actually the sport that I played. And my dad actually had quite a bit of wisdom, or I guess still does, that he used to teach me back then, including things like your mindset can affect your performance. You will also do better if you accept the result instead of trying to fight it, things like that. And so I'm 15 and he's having a bad night. He's not performing well. And we had the type of relationship where we could have those conversations with each other. It wasn't just one way. It wasn't just him like coaching me or teaching me. I could kind of do that with him as well. And we finish up that night and we're walking to the car, and I'm talking to him about all of the same things he would normally talk to me about, just kind of reassuring and that type of thing. I don't remember exactly the words I said, and I don't remember exactly the words he said back to me. But the reason why it stuck with me so much is because the vibe, the frequency of the words that he said to me literally shattered my reality. At 15, I then understood my parents were attempting to help me to live whatever life I wanted to have. They were trying to give me an amount of confidence that they never knew, and also that almost no one else that I knew at that point had known either. Just this, confidence that I could chase my dreams. I could live a life that I truly loved, that I didn't have to settle. And so all of this really started that night, because I then just had this tug in my heart of like, well, I've been gifted with this mindset to help me live this really amazing life. And this is not something that everyone has. And that doesn't mean that I haven't struggled with it. I mean, as we were talking about, I was even struggling with it just this week. But everything that's going on in my life now really started that night, which is really surreal to talk about, because everything I've ever dreamed of is in fact starting to unfold right now. Like, this is the version of me that is able to actually start creating that impact. And so it's honestly really cool to even be here with you talking about that, because even just a few months ago, telling that story was still, I guess, somewhat of a pipe dream. It was still, I'll be so fulfilled when I finally get to start doing this work. And then last month, I finally just said it's time. So yeah, it all started with that night and that conversation with my dad.
Yeah, and what would be helpful, and just thinking about our viewers as well, is can you say more about that impact that you want to have on whatever the number of people is? How would you want to envisage that, what that looks like, what people will be saying to you, kind of just bringing it to life? What is it that people can expect from, the gift that you want to bring to the world?
It's really just that kind of radical authenticity that we've been talking about. Me learning what it feels like to truly live a life that I love. Even though it started 15 years ago, obviously then I had no idea exactly what it was going to look like. I didn't have the answers, and not that I necessarily, have the answers. Everyone still has the answers inside of themselves. But I think it's really just, I would want people to feel like they have the power to create the life that they want, and they have the power to be who they truly are. Because now, knowing how that feels, or at least I guess I should say a sliver of how that feels, because I'm always learning who I truly am and I'm always becoming more of who I truly am, that is the greatest gift I will ever have. There is nothing in my life that will ever be more profound than this finding myself. And I just want everyone to be able to feel like they can access that.
Gosh, that is so much what Earl and I both talk about. First off, I just want to say I love that you brought back this memory of when you were 15. Some of the things that you articulated that your father would coach you up about. I say some of those same things to my 17-year-old daughter now. And it's inspiring for me to think, oh my gosh, in 10 or 15 or 20 years, she'll be reflecting on that and how she remembers it. So I love that story. And I 100%, it deeply resonates with me that I know a few people that live in the South, that live in like Eastern Tennessee. And you're absolutely right. The community is very much, this is who we are. This is what we've always been. This is what will always be. But I think outside of even that community, I feel like there's a broader, and you're right, it's an appropriate generalization for that area. But I think across the entire human population, we don't clearly recognize our own power to create the life that we want. We don't recognize how empowered we really are to challenge these beliefs, these social narratives that aren't true for us, which you so very eloquently articulated in your chapter in the book. We don't realize that our thoughts aren't who we are, that we can actively create thoughts that empower different behaviors and different emotions and different outcomes in our lives. And now is the time really for people to understand that power and to step into it so that they can more effectively navigate. We all, because we're all on this journey together, right? We can all effectively navigate this ever changing, rapidly changing, breakneck speed changing world that we live in on our terms and not sort of just get drugged behind the wagon of someone else's stories, someone else's expectations, the world's changes that are happening. So I think you are going to have broad and powerful impact and influence throughout the world just because of the way that you show up, very authentically telling your story, all details of it. So thank you for that, because the work that you do to create a better world and to wake people up informs the world that we all live in. It sort of lifts, the tide lifts all the ships, right? So
Yeah.
I'm grateful for you and the work you're doing for yourself, on yourself, and then also the work you're doing with other people, because now that is what you're doing full time. You have a workshop coming up tomorrow, isn't it? Or
Friday.
Friday. Yeah, tell us about that.
So I just feel called to be honest about the fact that this is all ever evolving, because one of the things, as I just said it, is I don't have all of the answers. I think I feel like I'm here as more of just a mirror, or someone that can help walk that path with you, that can maybe help guide you towards you finding those answers for yourself. And so, what I'm currently playing around with in the business realm is how can we create businesses that we truly love, that reflect who we are. And I thought, because sales is so close to my heart, sales is basically what I've done for the past 10 years in various finance roles. And I know how many times I just I felt the ick, I felt the frustration of not being able to convey the right message, of not being able to let the other person across the table know that I was genuinely there for them and that I did want to help them and I wasn't just trying to sell them something. And that's terrible for them, and that's also terrible for me as well. There's nothing fun about those interactions where you feel like you just can't quite get the words right. And so one of the things I've been working on in kind of this journey of how do we unlock some of these things within business is realizing that it's kind of the frequency that we're holding, it's the energy that we're showing up with, it's not necessarily the words that we're saying. And so this is the first offering that I'm putting out there. This is kind of the start of things on Friday, and I thought, why not start with sales? Because I know that's a pain point for so many people. That was a pain point for me, even just still a month ago in my finance role. I didn't leave with already having the answers and already having the success, so to speak. I left knowing there was a different way and deciding it was time to start helping other people create that, not waiting until I had the proof that I had done it myself to be able to show that I'm worthy of doing this work, or whatever you want to call that.
Mm. Mm.
I love that. That's really bold and courageous, um, an approach. And as you said, it's a different way. And sales is something that has been close to my heart for nearly 25, nearly 30 years. I was in sales, so I totally appreciate that. And there is a way to be authentic in sales for sure. And I had to learn it, but I'm conscious that we're at time. We really try to keep it to time. So thank you
Yes.
so much, Sabrina. I mean, what you've shared is just really spoken to what we speak about in radical resilience. And, I'm just wishing you every success for the future.
Thank
Mm.
you.
Absolutely. Before we leave, because this was very unconventional, we didn't start like we normally start, and but we're going to get this recording out there. Where can people find you aside from LinkedIn? Do you have a website yet or email
I
address?
do.
We can also drop it in the. Maybe we'll do that. We'll drop it in the comments so that people have it when, yeah, when we put
Yeah.
this out in the world.
Basically, and on every social media, I'm at the Sabrina Riley, and then the business is called Transformational Consulting. So, um,
Transformationalconsulting.com.
.co.
.co. Okay.
Mhm.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sabrina, for sharing yourself so authentically, not only during our time today, but out in the world on your social media platforms, in the book, which was just really an inspiring chapter for anybody. Leading with Compassion. It's a changing work, curated book. So
Yeah.
thanks very much. It was wonderful
Thank
spending time with
you.
you. Earl, take care, my friend.
You too. Till next time.
Thank you
Okay.
for having me.
All right. Thank
Absolutely.
you.
Thank you.
Pleasure.